Thanks for watching AM Northwest. And now here to help those of us who live or maybe work with a self-centered person. We welcome back the author of The Human Lie Detection and Body Language 101, Vanessa Van Edwards. Good to see you, Vanessa.
Yeah.
I feel like you're talking about me.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't hinting.
So it's a narcissist. Explain what a narcissist is.
Yes, so it is someone who is excessively obsessed with themselves. So they love to be the center of attention. They talk about themselves. They always somehow manage to bring the conversation back to them. They take a lot of selfies, right? They're always like, you know, the pose and the selfie. They're just very much about themselves.
Okay.
And you say you have a quiz. We
Yes.
can figure out who is one.
Yeah, so a lot of people ask me, you know, how do I know? And they can be called egotistical. They also can be called megalomaniacs. That's all the same word for narcissism. So think about the person in your life, and I want you to ask yourself one of these 5 questions. And Dr. Judith Orloff created this quiz to see if this person, so think about the person in your head. Here's the first one. Does the person act as if life revolves around them?
Oh, yeah.
Do I have to compliment this person to get their attention or approval?
And now let's talk about that for a second.
Yes.
Because that seems like pretty glaring. If to even begin a conversation, say, oh, nice sweater. Hey, can you pick up eggs on the way home? You know, so how does that?
So the difference is, and you probably know this person, where compliments are great. You know, people respond well. This is the kind of person where they're kind of off in their own head until you compliment them. So the only way you can get their attention is if you're like, oh, I'm bringing it back to you and all the things that you're doing and making it great about them. So they only hone in on you when you're talking about them. So it's a little bit different.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do they constantly steer the conversation back to themselves?
So you're telling a good story. Oh, I have one.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they one up.
Is it is it as simple though as just, you know, my mom was in the hospital. Oh, you know, my mom went through that too. Is it like that?
It's when it's not just commiserating, because it's important to say, oh, I've been there, I've understood that. It's when you're dealing with an issue and all of a sudden it becomes their issue. Or you're telling a story and then they're telling a bigger story and a better story and they forget about your story. So it's when they take it back, not as an empathetic way, but it's all about them and their stories.
Okay.
But it would seem that there's a fine line there between narcissistic and just trying to be involved in that.
Yes,
and you have to be careful.
Yes, and that is because narcissism is a spectrum. So that is why it's very hard to find this line. We're going to talk about this idea of a spectrum. There's not just yes or no. There's sort of this gray scale.
Okay.
So, all right, the next one. Do they downplay your feelings or interests? Right, so as you're speaking, oh, that's no big deal, mine is bigger, mine is better, mine is more important.
Right.
And the last one is, if you disagree, do they become cold or withholding? So this is someone who takes criticism very badly, or even disagreeing with their opinion, they kind of shut off on you. So Dr. Judith Orloff found that if you answered yes to any of these questions twice or more, then so this person falls on the narcissistic personality scale. Now, in 2006, narcissism was actually diagnosed as a disorder. It's called NPD, Narcissistic Personality Disorder.
Wow.
And they estimated it affects about 1% of the population, okay? So a small percentage. And the most important thing is what you guys pointed out earlier, is it is a spectrum. So usually someone, if you answered yes to only 2 of them for this person, they're pretty low on the spectrum. But if you answered yes to all 5 of them, they're gonna fall a little higher on the spectrum. So what's really important is step number 2. So once you've identified sort of where they fall, is you want to identify their triggers. So if you think about the person in your life, when are they most egotistical? Or when do they really need to be the center of attention? Does it happen at work? Does it happen at home? Is it around a certain person or a certain topic? Identifying triggers can help you figure out when and why they act that way.
I would think that most narcissists, there's either confused with or a level of insecurity.
Yes. Oh, I love it, Dave. Okay, so the third thing.
See, I was right.
And I've always believed that he should be a psychologist because he is very good about this. Yeah,
That's exactly right. So the reason why we identify
back
triggers.
to you. You wanted it back to you,
Thank
so
you.
I brought it back to you.
So this brings me perfectly to number 3, which is once you've identified where they fall on the spectrum, identify their triggers, is to think about where they come from. So Dr. Glenn Gobbard found that people who have narcissistic tendencies are usually hiding some kind of shame or vulnerability. So it develops from a very deep, deep insecurity. So this helps us also with our compassion. right? If we have a narcissistic person in our life, it's probably because deep down there is something that they are desperately afraid we're going to find out about them.
Oh, good point.
Or we're desperately afraid that
So it's a
going to come
guard.
out.
It's a shield.
Absolutely. And so when you see this, the most important thing is to not try to change them, but to offer empathy. So the biggest mistake that people make with narcissists is they say, I want to try to get them to focus on me, or I'm going to try to change them for the better. If they have a deep insecurity, the best thing you can offer them is empathy and compassion.
So does that mean that you feed into, if they need compliments, you give them the compliments?
It's not feeding into it. It's a really good. So it's not enabling their narcissism. It's offering them support. So here's an example. So I went to school with a narcissistic personality type, and I was at a wedding recently, and she hadn't changed at all. But I noticed that at the bachelorette party around all girls, she was much calmer. But at the rehearsal dinner where it was co-ed, all of a sudden she had to be the center of attention. And so I brought her aside. We were sort of sitting aside before the wedding, and I said, I noticed that you were so different around just us girls. Is that more relaxing for you? And we started to talk about how she's single, that at weddings she feels like she has to be the center of attention to show that she's okay.
Oh, interesting.
As a single person.
All right, we're out of time, but this,
Yes.
I got to ask you two fast things. One, so
Yes.
if you're in a relationship with a narcissist,
Yes.
you have to understand all that and make sure your needs are known. But let me ask you very quickly. In a
Yes.
business world,
Yes.
can you use their narcissism to your advantage?
I think it's always good to know someone's strengths and weaknesses, and that's always to your advantage.
Oh, very good.
Points,
oh,
Vanessa.
I love this.
The book again is titled Human Lie Detection and Body Language 101. Vanessa Van Edwards. Good to see you again.
All right.